Let's continue our look at operating systems then, and we're exploring all the functions of an operating system, all the things that it does without you even realizing. And the next thing we're going to look at is file management. So a file operating system lets you muck about with the files on a computer. It lets you create files, it lets you organize them, and it does it in a particular way, because it forces you into this this folder sort of hierarchy. So we have an idea that we have a folder, and within a folder we can have another folder, or we can have a file. They're your two options, and the operating system forces that to be the case. It doesn't let you do anything any different, but it lets you do things like create, move about, delete and rename all these folders and files. And it might let you do that through GUI, so a graphical user interface, or a command line interface. Have a little look at the other operating system video for more information about user interfaces, but I'm going to show you how it works with a GUI. So let's have a look here. So this is Windows, and this is our typical interface to allow us to create and move about different sort of files and rename them. So here we go. I'm in a computer science directory in my C drive. I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to go new. I'm just going to call this have a text document. I'm going to create a new file called computer science is fun. Okay, because it is. All right, so there is our file. Let's make that a little bit bigger so we can actually see it. And now I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it I can put files or folders in this. That is a long name for a folder, but there you go. It is done, and look what I can do. I can go into this folder, and now this folder is empty, and I can create another folder if I want to, another folder, and I can move files from one folder to another just by dragging and dropping in a GUI, which is one of those things that makes it nice and easy to use. Okay, I can delete that file. I can right click on my computer science file there and go to delete. I can move about, delete, rename all these files and folders. Not to be underestimated, the power of file management, and that is an important thing that an operating system provides. Okay, our next one is peripheral management and drivers. So let's cover first off what a peripheral is. Well, let's see if we can spell peripheral. And a peripheral is anything which is on the outside of the computer. So if you think of a computer that you've got in front of you, you will have, like, let's say it's got like a tower or something here with a CD drive. Let's examine all the peripherals that you can have. So first off, there's a keyboard. It's outside of the computer. That is a peripheral. Let's say we've got a mouse attached to it. That is also a peripheral because that's on the outside of the computer. This monitor is a peripheral as well, actually, because that's attached to the computer by a cable. So anything on the outside or around the edges of the computer, that's where it's periphery, where the word comes from, peripheral. That is something that the operating system has to manage. Because if you ever think about it, you are using probably a mouse if you're using a PC right now, and it is made by someone. So this might be made by Microsoft, for example. But then you might have another mouse when you go into school made by Logitech, and they will all communicate slightly differently. So they'll send slightly different signals to the computer when they're being moved up, down, left or right. Okay, that's just the nature of having different manufacturers for different pieces of hardware and technology. So can you imagine that if you are making a computer game, or if you're making any other piece of software, if you had to deal with all the different signals that every single mouse could possibly send to the computer, that would take a long time. You'll have hundreds of these to have to deal with, and that's just mice. So the operating system does that for you. It uses device drivers to communicate with different peripherals on the outside of the computer and provides like a common interface, a common platform for any other software to run on. So that means as a computer game developer, I know I'm just going to get a signal from the operating system that the mouse is being moved up, rather than having to worry about individual manufacturers. The other thing that the operating system does is it manages the communication between the computer and the devices. So you might have, for example, a printer over here. And let's say you've sent several documents to that printer. Well, they'll be stored in something called a buffer, a printer buffer, and sent to the printer one by one as it gets through them. The management of that buffer, that temporary area where it's going to store that data, is all done by the operating system. Near there, we've got user management. Okay, so that is something that an operating system provides as well. Now, you may have logged into the computer you're using. If it's a phone or something like that, chances are no, but maybe if it's a computer, especially if it's at school, you will have logged into a user account. That account is controlled by the operating system, and it will tie a set of files and programs to your account. So when you log in with that account, you will see those files and folders. But perhaps if you were to log in with a different account or a different user, you would see a different set of files and potentially programs. And particularly when we talk about different files and programs, we talk about access levels as well. So as a user, you'll be able to access a particular set of files. Now you might have different levels of access. So for example, if you're a teacher, you might have access to more programs than a student would do, something like the register system. If you're a manager, you might have access to other files and things which contain sensitive information which others cannot see. So managing who has access to what files is also done by the operating system. Lastly, the operating system needs to provide some level of security for those different accounts. So that's the idea that you'll need a password to be able to log into it, or maybe some sort of two-factor authentication. There's no point for an operating system to provide different levels of access and different accounts if it's going to let everybody use everybody else's accounts. So that idea of security as well. So user management then, peripheral management and drivers, and file management is also part of what an operating system does. If you've seen that and you've seen the other video, then you know everything that an OS does. If you found that video useful, please hit the like button and hit subscribe to the channel. Keep learning and revising more computer science by clicking on the videos linked here.